we go deeper into women and leadership in the cooperatives. Um, and we've touched on that a little bit. You know, we touched on how leadership is often prescribed to men, and you know, community and collective organizing is ascribed to women, and these cliche boxes that we've been putting ourselves in, um, that lead us to overlook strength in places that it is not traditionally recognized. And these few pages definitely do that. Um, and throughout the book, and I just love it because it highlights heroes. You know, we got to continue to highlight our sheroes. So, because they're part of the equation too. And I wanted to start off this book reading also with a little bit from Jackson Rising. If you don't have it, please get a copy. You know, I like to dip in it because it's a specific case study of one cooperative, while collective courage is more of like a wide look at different ones. And we've been talking about people's assemblies. And so this part of the book, they talk about key components of an assembly event, right? And so there's a list here that kind of give you an organization inspiration. Um, so, number one, group norms and codes of conduct. I'm not going to read fully each one, but I'll read this first one. There should be co-constructed. These should be co-constructed by the participants of the assembly and should be crafted at the start of an assembly formation. These norms and codes should cover everything from how to facilitate a meeting, how to raise a question, how to raise an objection, how to keep the assembly from being dominated by a few members, how to check with various forms of privilege and power, and how to arrive at decisions and conclusions. The norms and codes should be visited and are referenced at each assembly event to ensure that all participants, old and new, know what they are and that they constitute the building operating principles of the assembly that ensure that it is productive and truly democratic, right? So I love how they list out specific areas to look out for when forming these codes of conduct, because human nature is human nature, and you can have people that like to step up a lot and people who like to step back a lot. And you want to hear both extremes. Everybody has something to contribute, and it is healthy to create guidelines so folks know how to stay in their lane, and continue to put their foot on the gas without crashing. So, um, number two, clear agenda. Number three, clear goals and objectives. Number four, clear and concise questions. Five, strong but even-handed facilitation. Six, detailed note-taking. Seven, next steps and follow-up procedures. So, you know, there you have it. Like, for those looking to be inspired on starting your own people's assembly, um, this book breaks down those details in different ways, and that's seven key components of an assembly event. All right, so let's keep it moving to collective courage. Today is March 28th, and we are reading pages 148 to 152. All right, Greg, you with us? You're on mute.
Yeah, I'm here, brother.
Okay. Yeah. What's up? What's up? So, um, here we go. So I'm gonna kick it off, and then I'll pass it to you in a few paragraphs. All right. So chapter 7, continuing the legacy. Nanny Helen Burroughs, Helena Wilson, and the role of black women. All right. You start with those who make up the majority of those living in poor communities, women, and respond to their self-defined problems. The major problem of For poor women is control of income, that is gaining access to income in ways that give women ultimate freedom in how it gets used, right? Um, yeah, why would you want to restrict that money flow? Women, have interest in things that they also want to buy and put their funds into. They help hold down households, and so to increase ways for them to reach their desired results through earning funds and buying what they want to put their money into is a good thing for the economy, as well as mental well-being and morale, I would say. Addressing the status of women in cooperatives does not result in just identifying a set of women's issues, but rather ways of thinking about a range of issues vital to cooperatives and their placement in the economy and the community. In other words, thinking about equity for women in democratic and management structures is one of a number of ways into thinking about the relevance and effectiveness of cooperatives in general. It is also a way to begin considering barriers that affect all underrepresented groups. All right. Women are members and men are full-time directors. This is from the Japanese Consumers Cooperative Union 1999. This belief has been the norm in the cooperative movement throughout the world. Many observers have noted that women belong to, use, and participate in cooperative enterprises for their own um, and their families' benefit, but tend not to be in control. The United Nations, the International Labor Organization, and the International Cooperative Alliance, among others, all address this issue in research and in conferences on women's roles in cooperatives in industrialized countries as well as underdeveloped countries. Topics addressed have ranged from the relationship between women's roles in the economy and society in general and in cooperatives, women's occupational status and economic insecurity, and cooperative economic development, as well as women's access to capitals, women's management capacity, and women's leadership in cooperatives. Yeah, we're shaking up all of those weak roles that have been assigned. You know, leaders can come in many forms. All right, let's keep going. My research on African American owned cooperatives find that black women have been an integral part of the black cooperative movement, playing roles similar to those they have played in the black church, mutual aid societies, and the civil rights movement. They often they have often been the ones organizing and managing in the background, doing much of the scut work without the glory or formal recognition bestowed by a title or paid or board position. And I think that is the fact that this first quote that said women are members and men are full-time directors, right? That culture is kind of opposite of an ideal cooperative structure, right? Because everyone has value, everyone has something to participate, and yes, they are putting them in the equation, but to delegate them only to one portion does not really equal everyone being seen as equal. It kind of gives everyone kind of like a hierarchy that they have to follow. And I feel like, yeah, in order for a cooperative to be successful, they can't fall in line with social orders that are restrictive like that. I don't think they work, or I don't think they're a smart decision for the long term. All right. At the same time, African American women in some cases were not just members, but also the founders, managers, and directors of cooperative associations, and the collective activity in African American communities were arranged and strengthened by women's work. Women like Maggie Lena Walker, Ella Jo Baker, and Fannie Lou Hamer founded, organized, and directed important economic projects and businesses along with men, sometimes playing a prominent role as president or executive director, and often doing whatever needed to be done to make the project or business work. Elena Wilson, the president of the International Ladies Auxiliary to the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters and education director of the Consumers Cooperative Buying Club in Chicago, heavily promoted the study and practice of consumer cooperation in all the auxiliaries and in the black trade union movement from the 1930s to the 1950s. Others like Nanny Helen Burroughs, Estelle Witherspoon, Rebecca Johnson, Linda Leaks, developed enterprises owned and managed by black women for women's betterment. In this chapter, I investigate black women's cooperative accomplishments in more detail, like the Ladies Auxiliary to the BSCP, Freedom Quilting Bee, and the Freedom Farm. You want to pick it up from here, Brother Greg? 149.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Dr. Gordon Emhart writes how many Black women have participated in co-ops and co-op development as members and supporters. We've talked about examples of the Independent Order of St. Luke and the awesome penny savings bank that they were able to start. The Cooperative Trading Company in Gary, Indiana, where the Women's Guild was responsible for reinvigorating the movement in that city, helping to increase membership. The Women's Guild was formed by many women who attended the first evening class on cooperative economics taught at Roosevelt High School in 1933 by Jacob Reddix. Several of the co-ops of the 30s and 40s had women's guilds or women empowerment as part of their mission. The Young Negroes Cooperatives League is another important example, with its focus on youth leaders and women's equality, and Ella Jo Baker's pivotal role. Some were organized by women, and some, in addition, were owned solely by women. Cooperative Industries, Washington, D.C., was one such enterprise. And on page 150, there's also a table like kind of setting out like what's been going on since the 1700s. And so like Dr. Gordon Emhart talks about how women leaders and organizers in mutual aid and beneficial societies were really big in the 1700s through the 1800s. Getting into the early 1900s is when Maggie Lena Walker and the Independent Order of St. Luke was able to gather like 50,000 members, start up a penny savings bank, help folks get mortgages, keep their homes and all of that kind of stuff. There's also similar things that have happened, like the Consolidated Bank and Trust Company in Richmond, Virginia. 1930 is like, one of our favorite times, at least mine, Ella Jo Baker and the Young Negroes Cooperatives League. In addition to Nanny Helen Burroughs and Cooperative Industries of Washington, D.C., where like young Black folks are really trying to like author our own future, right? And figure out how we can do this stuff for ourselves and continue supporting. Yeah, I mean, like what needed to be done in that time frame, and often like what still remains undone. As we're getting into the 40s, there's a lot of work that's happening with the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters. And just a little like historical context, before freeways and airplanes, there were trains, and that's how like everything was connected. And the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters are the Black folks primarily, who are servicing those trains, taking like newspapers from one spot to another, like making a lot of connections. And so that's where a lot of our work was happening in the 1940s. Coming into the like civil rights movement, Black empowerment movement in the 60s, we're seeing Estelle Witherspoon and the Freedom Quilting Bee, in addition to Fannie Lou Hamer and the Freedom Farm, two amazing initiatives that like galvanized a whole bunch of folks. And then getting into like the more recent period, she's highlighting Peggy Armstrong and the Cooperative Home Care Associates out in New York, women organizers with the Worker-Owned Sewing Company and Dawson's Textile Company in North Carolina, Avis Ransom and the SSC Employment Agency in Baltimore, Shirley Sherrod, New Communities. She was very helpful in like kind of piloting what we know as land trust today. It's interesting, if you look back into it, the idea of land trust is connected to the civil rights movement, and like Slater King, MLK's family member in some way, also involved. So there's always connections. Also highlighting Shirley Blakely, Alice Paris, Carol P. Zippert, and Melba Smith, helping to create the Federation of Southern Co-ops, being really pivotal there. The Federation is involved in pretty much all the South and has helped like take a lot of land off the speculative market, help folks keep their farmland. Also helping with a lot of mortgages, like there's more on that in this book. And so there's just a lot. I'm not even like naming all of them because we got more to talk about. It's just like it's important to highlight like what Black women have done and like kind of just to comment on what Ajman was saying to open us up with how they're doing it out in Jackson, Mississippi, in the Jackson Rising book. Like the way we organize and make decisions in cooperatives oftentimes is analogous to the way we organize and make decisions like in a democratic space in our like communities. And so like oftentimes the tools are going back and forth, but like one that has seemed like really pivotal and like I guess in the center of a lot of stuff is how we're dealing with gender in this time frame and like how we're making space for like new concepts of that. And so I'll just say that like, you know, each group is able and how do I say? It's a strong suggestion that you like talk about those like codes and like how you want to act with each other, like what makes that group feel good, and how we treat others. So that's always an important thing. And getting on the same page at the beginning, checking in on it throughout the course of our existence, you know, because things do change. At the bottom of page 150, we're getting into cooperative industries of Washington, D.C., which was based on the women's cottage industry and a self-help project that began with and was targeting public money to help put women to work in Lincoln Heights, Washington, D.C. And so a joint committee representing the citizens associations of Northeast Washington organized the Northeast Self-Help Cooperative to prevent pauperism, provide industrial education, and the opportunity to work and train the unemployed and handicapped in self-supporting occupations. And so July 16th, 1934, Nannie Helen Burroughs was elected president. Man, I was meaning to look up on this, but this name for this scholar, activist, and local resident, Chancellor Williams, sounds like the guy who's like done a lot of history texts. Am I mistaken, Ajman? Like, I don't know if that's the same person.
No, no, I thought the same thing. I haven't checked if that's true, but
but it's just like we keep finding connections between like what co-ops are doing and like just the wider social movement. And like if y'all haven't read up on Chancellor Williams and like the great books he's written, if this is the same guy, but just look him up. It's a crazy like coincidence. I'll give it back to you, Ajma.
All right, cool. So the Northeast Self-Help Cooperative used resources and physical space of the National Training School for Women and Girls, of which Burroughs was a founder and president. The cooperative used 4 classrooms for the sewing unit, a room for the clinic, the kitchen for canning, as well as the dining room and chapel. From the beginning, the group targeted federal funds from the Federal Emergency Relief Administration Division of Self-Help Cooperatives and spent 2 years submitting letters of intent and proposals and meeting, corresponding with staff from the FERA, Burroughs, and the board of directors. In its first 6 months, the cooperative was successful. The sewing unit was the largest in the District of Columbia, with 50 women members, and the cooperative boasted that it had done more canning than any other black cooperative in the city. Okay, so they was coming a little competitive right there. Like, look, we got the numbers. We put numbers on the board, and and I like a little friendly competition, honestly. But that's pretty profound. In 1936, the Northeast Self-Help Cooperative finally received a FARA grant of $19,000, 633. Changed its name to Cooperative Industries of Washington, D.C. Now, today's equivalent would be $733. If they had, due to inflation, that's how much it will be if they got that today. Hope records that Cooperative Industries was founded by Nanny Helen Burroughs and the Sadie Morse Bethel. Oh, and Sadie Morse Bethel. Although Alice Dunbar Nelson did not specifically mention this cooperative, she highlighted Burroughs' work in one of her columns in The Messenger. Again, more documentation is so key to these movements. According to Nelson, Burroughs conceived the idea of a domestic servants organization with rules, regulations, and projects similar to the unions among men laborers or skilled workmen. A building was bought and operated for the girls in the heart of workmen. A building was bought and operated for the girls in the heart of Northwest Washington. The DSO operated a social center with classes, lodging rooms, recreation rooms, dining rooms, and all the rest of it. Nelson commented that the girls needed more safe opportunities for factory work and other work outside domestic service. The DSO tried to provide this, as did other Burroughs projects. Nelson noted that Burroughs did not have the time or money to make the DSO national and was already running her own school, the National Training School for Women and Girls. Started in 1909, the school curriculum uniquely combined vocational training and liberal arts education, including Bible study and one required course in Black history. Burroughs aimed to educate all young women regardless of their position in life and to offer women professional training that might help them earn a higher salary and afford better living conditions. And I would also add, like, if you're able to, give them this education and they're able to improve themselves, they're also able to add more to the collective. You know, it's something they go together. If you can improve someone's thinking capabilities, in terms of like critical thinking, Black history, improve their morale. Oh, we have been great. Reminding them, giving them some financial education. All of these things can help. You might need somebody to help run your books or be an assistant, or So again, that self help, that education, it's inseparable, I think, because it just helps improve the quality of life and the quality of the community. All right, let's keep moving. Let's see. The school curriculum uniquely combined vocational training. Oh, excuse me. Okay, presumably the Southeast Self-Help Cooperative and Cooperative Industries grew out of the kind of need that Nelson described as a concern for Burroughs almost 10 years earlier, and reflected the philosophy that drove Burroughs' National Training School, which provided support for the cooperative. Washington, after talking with Burroughs, described the co-op as a cooperative project embracing the people of the community in a group of industries and in a farming project located in Maryland. In a letter soliciting members of cooperative industries, Burroughs and the board of directors outlined an ambitious list of projects: a list of roadside market, cannery, laundry, shoe repair shop, barrel, chair handcrafts, production, training, and beauty care. So many services. Potential members potential members were invited to a cooperative study class, an introductory session about the cooperative at the training school. So more education. Membership dues were $5 per year. According to Hope, the cooperative consisted of unemployed workers and homemakers who were unskilled and had incomes between $500 and $1,000 per year. So they were very clear on their demographic. Oh, I also want to highlight on the chat, Natalie said a woman's first cooperative initiative is her family, and that's so true. And quite naturally, I think that's why leadership comes natural to a lot of women. It's because they, have been probably put in positions to lead their family from a young age. I've heard from many women peers that they were raised differently than their brother counterparts. That they were raised to be able to cook for the family, or handle the chores of the house, and were responsible for house duties more than their brothers were. Which could kind of maybe grow you up a little bit. Maybe if you're younger and you don't have those chores and obligations, you can mess around, do whatever, maybe just not be as serious. But giving chores, giving provision, or excuse me, giving direction to a young person, and helping them develop their responsibility could set you on a path towards greater maturity. Um, so yeah, that was a great point, Natalie. Anybody else had any insights from this reading? Again, we celebrating women in leadership and cooperatives. Oh, you had something to say, Raquel? You on mute if you.
Oh no, I was just saying not right now, but I
Oh,
definitely
not right
agree
now. Okay.
with Natalie on the like taking care of younger siblings, cooking, cleaning, other responsibilities at a much younger age will set you up to like do these things in a co-op, but it's not always recognized. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Greg, you got any last words before we sign off?
Um, I mean, I feel like you said it all. I want for I want for us to continue figuring out how to like untangle the messiness of the past and like create like equality and equity like in all we do. So I know that these readings and like understanding a bit about the past will lead to that. So just grateful we're sticking to that. Sankofa.
I say. Cool, cool. All right, y'all. We had time. Yeah, we appreciate everyone for joining us, and we'll see you tomorrow. Same black time, same black channel. Peace, love, and light.
Bye.